Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. How many times can you tell the same origin story? Well, let me tell you something, man. If you're a comic book fan, you've been asking yourself that question for years. And a lot of times we put up with it because we want to see what the new cast is going to do, the new creator, the new director. And I'm not talking about anything specifically. All right, fine. I'm looking at you, Batman. How many different times are we going to tell this origin story? How many times are we going to have flashbacks to the night his parents were gunned down? How many different times are we going to, talk about Superman, see that ship land with him as a baby? How many more times? Here's another one. How many times do we have to see Uncle Ben killed? How many more times this old dude have to die so we can tell the Spider-Man origin story? Well, I'm here to tell you, things got switched up with this character in a big bad way, in a great big bad way, in 2017 with the film we're going to talk about here today, Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, if you follow the show, you may be wondering, hey, I thought these guys did that. Nope. In fact, to be fans of the character as we are, and it's Phil's character for sure, kids, let me tell you what we've done. So episode 65, yes, it was that long ago. Spider-Man 2. That's November 28th, 2021. All right. We did Spider-Man No Way Home. I know, it's weird. We did that one January 4th, 2022, episode 73. It just came out, so we did it. We did The Punisher, which was just a look at the character where we talked about Spider-Man, January 10th, 2022. That was episode 74. And then we did the original Spider-Man 2002 with Tobey. That was episode 188, May 7th, 2024. Yes, we've talked about him other places. Yes, we've referenced him on Avengers podcasts. Yes, we've talked about him on other shows. But we have not done Homecoming. So here we are. We are finally doing Homecoming because we needed a topic. And I'm going to tell you something, man. If you're going to do a topic, you may as well do Spider-Man any day of the week, and especially this flick. Lots of great stuff to talk about here today. And the best part, one of the best parts, we didn't have to see Uncle Ben get killed. In fact, I don't even think they mentioned him. But we're going to get into that and a whole lot more. But first, let's do this. Spider-Man Homecoming is a 2017 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character Spider-Man, co-produced by Columbia Pictures and Marvel Studios, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Everyone feel free to boo and throw tomatoes. I'll tell you why later. It is the second Spider-Man film reboot and the 16th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How you like that? The film was directed by John Watts from a screenplay by the writing teams of Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, Watts and Christopher Ford, and Chris McKenna and Eric Summers. Lots of people. Tom Holland stars, of course, as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, alongside an assorted cast of actors. Awesome people in this movie. Man, I love this film. Forgot how much I truly, truly enjoy it. Can't wait to talk about it. Released June 28th, 2017. And at the TCL Chinese Theater. They renamed that TCL Chinese. What are we doing? And then July 7th, 2017 in the United States. Running time 133 minutes. The budget for this film, this is a good one, is $175 million. The box office, $880.9 million. Oh my, and that is your lowdown for Spider-Man Homecoming. Phil, when I reached out to you about this, I had to check. Sometimes I come up with an idea and I have to go check because we've done a lot, and sometimes we've done them. I was going to reach out to you about something else. We'd already done it. I forget what it was now. But so I reached out to you about this. And we're going backwards, but it is what it is. We number these shows for the sake of numbering them, but they're not in chronological order, so everybody can bounce around as they want to. So going into this, Phil, Spider-Man Homecoming, What's your overall take on this one, man? How much do you dig this film?
I love this movie. I mean, like you said, Spider-Man is my character. Spider-Man to me is one of the greatest fictional characters of all time. Um, you talk about a character that has been a constant in my life in multiple ways. Um, I, in 2014, made the trek to New York just to see Amazing Spider-Man 2 in New York, and just all these other things that I've done multiple times for a Spider-Man movie, just as a fan of Spider-Man. Um, and I remember vividly when this came out. I believe it came out 2017.
Yes.
Had to be 2017. 2016 was a terrible year for me. 2016 was a terrible year for a lot of people. Uh, but I just will never forget when this movie came out. I was not in a great place. And this movie came out. I, of course, went to see it the weekend it came out. And it's hard to just top the joy of sitting in the theater and the Marvel Studios credits comes across and the original theme song played, and just getting that feeling of like being a fan of this character for so long and living through all five of the Sony movies and getting all the way to the point where Marvel got its flagship character in Spider-Man back,
Mm.
and seeing the original theme song played over the Marvel Studios credits, seeing Stan in this movie, and Stan being alive to see his creation in a Marvel Studios movie. Can't top that moment for me in terms of joy. Stan being in this movie, Stan tragically passed away a year after this movie came out, but just the fact that he was still here for that. Grateful, just like what a time.
You know, the only thing that compares to that to me is the line that he had in Into the Spider Verse when it always fits eventually. Oh my god, dude, so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things in retrospect, like him in that movie and that line, I can't remember which X-Men movie it is where his cameo is there and he's clutching his real life wife and they both passed away now.
Mm.
Yeah. Stan, like Spider-Man, means a lot to me. And just like I said, seeing Stan in his first movie back in Marvel Studios and what this movie represents, I think for uh, all of the Spider-Man movies we've seen, this felt like Spider-Man in high school. This feels like a high school drama
Hmm.
starring Spider-Man.
Very much influenced by the John Hughes movies, which we've talked about here before.
Yes, yes, and I that's why I love about it so much. It's not just that it's a great Spider-Man movie, but it fits the core of where he started. It feels like a high school coming of age movie featuring Spider-Man. A lot of the comedy in it hits. This feels like uh, a movie that happened on the ground floor in New York City. It doesn't feel like New York is just a backdrop. This movie is New York through and through. I mean, the school he goes to, the way that it's a melting pot, everything about it, it just feels like New York City.
Yeah, it does. So you mentioned the Sony Spider-Man movies. I mean, what were the? If I ask you what were the choices made here, we'll be here all day because a lot of choices made. Well, in good ways, because a lot of choices made here to separate this from the other, whether it was intentional or not, but to really get down to the core of the character. What is it that sets this apart from the other? Let's say Garfield's first one and Maguire's first one.
This is a very young Peter Parker, and it
Mm-hmm.
focuses on his time in high school. But because, like I said, we lived through the five Sony movies, um, we've also lived long enough to see those movies become mythologized. If I don't know if that's a word, but it's become like a part of pop culture. And so, because of that, you see so many things in this movie that were inspired by it. Like on the Staten Island ferry, where he's trying to hold both sides of the ferry together. There's no way that was not inspired by Spider-Man 2. There's things like when he's talking to Adrian at his house, and he gets the house, and he goes, "Come on, Pedro." No way that's not influenced by the first Spider-Man movie and Uncle Ben in that movie.
Very good. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, the high school choice, I think, was the right choice. I don't think you can do college. And I just think making him younger, they tried to pass him off in this movie as 15, which I'm not sure how old Holland was in this, but I'll find out here. But dude, Tom Holland is blessed with great DNA that that keeps him looking young when he's got no business looking that young. It is fantastic.
Yeah, he looks like a Ditko drawing of Peter Parker.
Hmm.
Like just the way he wears his hair, like his bone structure and everything, he just fits perfectly. Uh, and I love that you can make the argument that the Amazing Spider-Man movies were very much influenced by Ultimate Spider-Man, but you can see even more how these movies were influenced by Ultimate Spider-Man. I mean,
Mm.
the Iron Man armor that they used in this movie, very much the colorway and everything influenced by Ultimate Iron Man.
Oh, well done. Yeah. By the way, he was 18. Is that right? 18 or 19 when this movie came out? That's crazy. See, 27, that's 8 years. Yeah, he was 19 when this movie came out. How you like that?
Yeah. But yeah, he fits the role perfectly. Um, he just brings something to this role. And I mean, we knew that the second we saw him in Civil War. This movie is just so great. I love this movie. The way it starts, um, the origin story with Adrian Toomes, and then, of course, we get the vlog style stuff to fill in the blanks between this movie and Civil War, which is
Hmm.
fantastic. It's incredibly well done throughout.
Yeah, and this is after, this is, of course, is after, yeah, the flashback at the beginning of the film is after the first Avengers movie.
Yes.
And then because we hear Ultron reference later in the present time of 2017 as this movie's happening, because Phil, during this film, it is still 2017. Because as we know in the MCU now, they are 5 years ahead of us because of the snap.
Yes.
Yeah. So, by the way, Damage Control. Whatever happened to? Wasn't there like a heavily rumored Damage Control series that was supposed to happen on Disney Plus at that time?
Uh, yeah, I remember that. I don't know what came of that, but yeah, I definitely popped when I saw Damage Control on
Very
screen. I was
cool.
like, "Oh, cool. A great
Yeah.
comic reference." There are several references throughout this movie. If you're a big comic fan, I was like, "Oh, that's great." Like the brief Shocker cameo we got. Like this so many things that I didn't notice immediately, but then when I watched it the second time, I was like, "Ah,
He's even got the jacket with the
yes."
yellow sleeves with the black lines on them. It's great.
Yeah, with the like the quilted yellow sleeves. Yeah.
Yes. It's like, oh, you're the Shocker. Okay. Yeah. That's great stuff, man. Great stuff. Yeah. Dude, Tom Holland, we had to point this out that and I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I completely remember this. He made a movie in 2013 and the movie was called How I Live Now. And doing the press for this movie, he was asked by a reporter what kind of role he might want to try next. He replied saying a project with action and humor would be of interest to him. The reporter asked, "Would you ever like to play a superhero?" He said, "Maybe Spider-Man in 10 years' time, the reboot of the reboot, if they'd do that." I remember when that quote got out and I took a look at his picture and I was like, hey, that's doable. Like, and then fast forward 2017, here we are.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Perfect for this role. I think he's tremendous in this movie. I think he's been incredible in all of the movies that he's used him in, the Avengers movies. And I mean, I thought he was great in Civil War, but even more so, I felt like he embodied the character in this movie.
Mm, such a good job. I just can't, they couldn't keep him quiet. There's all those great stories. There's clips everywhere of him giving stuff away. Didn't Ruffalo do the same thing?
Yeah, he's kind of like the actress that I'm drawing a blank on that they cast for Miss Marvel, and them both being fanboys, like fangirls of these characters in real life, as well as being in the movie and fangirling or fanboying out about these things.
I mean, dude, that's who you want. That's who you want. Like, you want someone that loves the source material. Like, Willem Dafoe loved that character. And dude, it showed that he loved that character. It's important, man.
Yeah, yeah. I think it comes throughout this movie, how much he cares about Spider-Man and creating a proper representation for him on film. I mean, there's just so many things he brings to this role. I mean, just his banter when he's in the suit, his humor when he's in the suit, great stuff. When he's on the ferry and he comes in, he tries to give them the one-liner, and he's webbing all the guys up. He goes, "Man, that didn't work out. I'm shocked, shocked. I tell you." what he's giving all of the goofy puns. It's just so funny, man.
That's great stuff. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about this guy. I'm glad. And by the way, we're going to do the other two movies, or the second movie, which was Far From Home, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to do that one. That way we got the trilogy. But Tom Holland saved it. I mean, Spider-Man. Sony was taking off with Spider-Man and said, "If you were out," and dude, he saved it, man. Like, supposedly he contacted the head of Sony at the time and had a conversation. It's like, we can't stop this. Like, remember the news at the time, Phil? It's like, well, they're done. He's not coming to the MCU after all. Sony's pulling out.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly Holland was the one that brought everyone down, brought the temperature of the room down, and allowed everything to happen. I'm like, man, this guy's awesome.
Yeah. Couldn't imagine if we did not get this trilogy. But yeah, that when I look at this movie in retrospect, and it's so funny now because we've done a podcast about No Way Home, and you can already see the building blocks to where we got with No Way Home in this movie. Because again, like I said, you can see some of the references to the Toby movies in this movie, and just how much that the first trilogy meant to pop culture and how much it meant for this character.
Yeah, and you know what? Talking about building blocks, man, it's so odd seeing Downey in this. Not odd, but like Downey's still with us, right? But I kind of got a little sad because I'm like, Tony's dead. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, this isn't real. This didn't really happen. He didn't really snap his fingers and die, But man, they're just so great at telling their stories. But I just love the impact he had. It wasn't too much Downey, and it wasn't, not enough. I thought it was just the perfect amount.
Man, but yeah, you're right. There were scenes in this, and this is just how well they told stories. That Tony was such a big part of his origin, of him growing as a character, and there's just certain scenes in this movie where it's like, man, he's gone. Like when he's chewing him out after the Staten Island stuff, and he's saying, somebody could have got seriously hurt, and if that happens, that's on you. Something happens to you, that's on me, and I can't take that guilt. And I was like, oh, when he died in Endgame, it just connects different, man.
It does. My goodness. Yeah. I still get emotional at that scene. Oh my God, it's such a powerful moment when they start dusting away. Ooh, that's a deep movie, man. That freaking Infinity War and Endgame together. That's some heady stuff, man. Like, don't tell me comic movies can't be art, Phil, because you're lying to me.
Yeah, but yeah, having the foreshadowing of that, and him having to live with the mistake of going to Titan with Peter Parker and what became of that situation. Yeah, if we don't build these relationships between him and his character, between Civil War and this movie, it doesn't quite hit as hard.
Well, we probably would have been saved all these god awful Sony movies they've been making without him.
Yeah, I don't speak of those movies.
that dashingly handsome Kraven the Hunter, who's far more good looking than he ever had a right to be.
God.
Like, let's forget. By the way, I'm not gonna watch it because my God, but like suddenly he don't want to kill animals and stuff. I'm like, what? Excuse me, what? He didn't want to kill what now? Okay, dude, whatever. Jeez.
His whole bit is he's a hunter.
He's a hunter. It's in the name. Craven the hunter.
No. Craven, the environmentalist.
The environmentalist. Craven the tree hugger. I don't know.
Craven, the eco-terrorist.
The eco-terrorist. It's more friendly now. Yeah. More PC. Jesus, man. What are we doing? Like, that Madam Web movie. I love how they look. No disrespect to the actresses. I'll call them actors out of respect. No offense to the three actors in the lead roles. Like, they felt like they had to go on some sort of not apology tour, but like a defensive tour to defend the movie. I'm like, look, it's okay that you don't defend the movie. This is not a good movie. Like, no one's really blaming you. It's the freaking movie. It's the script. It's everything. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But, there we are. They're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing those movies, I guess, till they run out of money. I don't know. Maybe they found a way to write them off from their taxes every year, did Sony. Who knows, man? So we got the 1-2 punch here of RDJ, of course. We know he's going to make a comeback as Dr. Doom. Don't nobody be throwing stones at that. We hadn't even seen it yet. Everybody calm down. But we've got him here, of course, Tom Holland, who's absolutely nailing it. Can't say enough good things about him. But I got to get to the villain. Batman 1989 himself. Michael Keaton is absolutely, and don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years, right? This is freaking wonderful. My only regret, we didn't get him in more than just one film of this character.
Yeah, I was hoping we saw him in No Way Home. I think that would have been great if he made a cameo at some point. But yeah, he was fantastic in this movie. I love what they did with the Vulture character as well. Just retooling his origin and building it around the MCU stuff. I thought it worked perfectly. Just the metaphor of him being a guy that scavenged on the parts remaining from all of these things, like a vulture. Brilliant.
Well done. Oh my God. Did I even think of that? That was great. Yeah, like a vulture. Well done. Yeah. And, if anybody needed any proof of whether or not he should have been in this movie, if for some reason you still need proof of Michael Keaton being able to do something, he's sitting in the back of that car and he says, you walk through those doors forgetting this happened. And don't you ever say anything, interfere with my business again. Because if you do, I'll kill you and everybody you love. I'll kill you dead. Dude, he delivers that line like a stone cold killer. And I'm like, Michael Keaton, the funny man, is long gone in that moment. That is a amazing freaking delivery. No pun intended. Whew, man, when I watched that live in the theater for the first time, I popped. I was like, oh my God, this is a great movie.
Incredible acting. Just the range that he shows throughout this movie. He does a lot to humanize his character, and sometimes where you feel bad for him. But then also, off of this metaphor of him being a vulture, you see at multiple points how his greed was his undoing. And man, just like you said, that scene in that car, the twist that I didn't see coming, that he was Liz's dad the entire time, which is about the most Spider-Man plot twist that you can get. I mean, one of the best things about Spider-Man comics is that when he was in high school, all of his villains were built around all of these archetypes of who would be the person that a high school or a teenager would be afraid of, like an adult, like their teacher, like Dr. Kirk Connors, or I don't know, the dad of the guy that he's trying to date. And so to make the villain of the movie the dad of your crush, again, brilliant. Just such a brilliant way to tie in so many of the tropes from Spider-Man comics into this movie. And there are many tropes throughout this thing that are just like very specific to Spider-Man comics. Him leaving the notes places, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff. But just like I said, this dynamic between his villain with the mask on and somebody that is intimidating to him as Peter Parker, that is quintessential Spider-Man storytelling.
And also, and we've pointed this out many times before, it quite possibly, you could argue this all day because of Superman, and I understand, quite possibly the greatest comic book character of all time, because he is a real person. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Marvel. Thank you. Let's make these characters real so people will care about them. Like, if you're a Spider-Man writer, you have to find a way to put Peter Parker in his neck, knee deep, in the biggest pile of crap you can find, and then you take a shovel and throw more on top of his head, and so we can watch him dig his way out. Because that's the character, Phil. Like we've pointed out many times on the show before, Peter's life didn't get better because he got bitten by that spider. It got exponentially worse.
Yes. And that plays out multiple times in this movie where you feel for him. And you see like everything he's done at one point trying to prove that he was worthy to be an Avenger and that he was worthy of the suit. Early on, they make a point to show that, he dropped out of band, he dropped out of all of these things that he was doing to do this. Like he was slacking on like school and all of these other things, like slacking on all of his like interpersonal relationships because this meant everything to him. But you see midway through the movie that isn't just that being Spider-Man means everything to him. Doing the right thing means everything to him. And there are two scenes that stand out immediately. When he's getting ready to try and thwart that heist, and Liz is telling him, "Come down to the pool with me," and like he has in that moment the chance to just be like everybody else, to just be a kid, to go and be in the pool with this girl you have a crush on, and be on the decathlon team and do what you're great at. But instead, he chooses to go off and be Spider-Man. In the same breath, also, you got everything you wanted. You got the girl. You asked the girl that you wanted to take to the dance to go to the dance, and she wanted to go. You told her I like you, and she knew, and she wanted to go to the dance with you, and you couldn't go to the dance because I have to do the right thing. And that was the thing that stood out, not just in that scene, Michael Keaton's great acting. He didn't even give it a second thought. When he walked in that building, he didn't try to enjoy himself. As soon as he walked into the school, he knew he had to tell Liz, "I have to leave," because that's who Peter Parker is.
Yep, that's who he has to be. But yeah, and the moment that he did get ahead of himself when Tony called him out, and he said, "I'm nothing without this suit." He said, "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it."
Yes.
That dude, those moments of him getting ahead of himself or being, I don't know, selfish was the right word for Toby when he's in the car with Uncle Ben. Like he was selfish and he got ahead of himself, and then something terrible happened. When he gets out of his element or ahead of himself, Phil, is when bad things happen to him.
Yes.
It's like kind of the same thing. It's a lesson of this kid is doomed to be a Shakespearean character. Like he's never going to have a happy ending because he can't.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, even in this movie, you can say that he was being selfish a few times in this movie, that he cared more about being an Avenger and, the glory of being a hero more than doing the right thing at times in this movie. And every time he did that, it cost him. I mean, even when he tried to go to that party and he was gonna, come in there dressed as Spider-Man, it's like, well, wait a minute, I have to leave. What's that over there? What's this explosion? And like I said, that scene with him and Tony, where Tony chews him out and he says, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. And that's really the lesson for this movie for him. Man, the way that, again, there are moments of this movie where just joy of him under the rubble and he looks down and they have the Ditko mask over face in the water, and he does the big trope from Spider-Man comics of Spider-Man lifting heavy things.
Yeah.
Dude, when he's doing it and he starts by saying, "Come on, Peter," and then he stops saying, "Come on, Peter." He says, "Come on, Spider-Man," and he lifts it up. I started tearing up
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
it's such a great moment for the character. It's such a Spider-Man moment, man.
He got emotional too, Holland did. Really, really good in that moment.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's main event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
It reminded me of Torment. Remember McFarlane's Spider-Man series? That's what it reminded me of him being in this. I think it was in the sewer, like trying to get out. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Yes.
Oof. Great stuff. Can't say enough good things about this movie. My goodness. It made, you know what? It made me miss the original run of the Marvel films. It made me miss, leading up to, we hadn't got to Endgame yet. We were still a few movies away. I mean, man, I miss it. God, dude, I miss it. Like, I'm anxious to see what they do next because I'm in the bag and I'm always here for it. But it made me reminisce. And I'm like, God, I miss this stuff, man.
Yeah.
I really miss it.
Yeah, that time period where they were clicking on all cylinders coming out of
Mm.
Civil War and they were building up to the next two Avenger movies. It didn't feel like they could miss it that time. And that movie, when this movie came out, I thought this was like, in my opinion, it's one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made.
I agree. Yeah. We before we get to the rest of the cast, we did get some cameos here. We got the guy we talked about in the last episode. And we did get a lot of Cap, but he was doing the PSAs for the school. A bunch of pre-recorded segments he had done, and they just did them all in one day probably. They're freaking great, man. So You got the tension. Right. You messed up. It's so good.
Yeah, him doing like these after school special segments, so funny. The one he does at the end of the movie, Patience.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to spend a lot of time waiting for something, and sometimes it's a letdown. How many more of these things we got to film?
Yeah.
It's so great. It is so great that he's wearing the suit from the first Avengers movie as well. It's so great.
Oh, awesome stuff. I'm so glad he was here, especially because the Civil War stare down. When he says, "Where are you from?" Queens, and he says, "Brooklyn." Great moment.
Yes.
Great moment.
I say often that is one of my favorite moments from Civil War, of not just Peter Parker being a part of it, but their interaction and Tony's thought of, "I believe in you," and nobody else believed in you. But I don't think that's exactly true. I think that Cap believed in Peter Parker, but it just was like, I don't know this kid, and I didn't even really get a chance to learn him because you threw him into this situation he shouldn't have been in. And it's like, even him saying, like, the kid, how could you do this? Like, which is such a great part of the dynamic between Cap and Tony, where Tony means well, but it's also like, what are you doing, man? You're putting this kid in this situation that he doesn't really understand.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because we don't, by we, I mean you, never let Tony off the hook. No, I'm just kidding. Well, it's the way that, look, you observe the way the character is written and your points are very valid. But I think, as we know, I think that's all intentional. He's meant to be an imperfect character and his mistakes come back to haunt him. What do you think about him handling Peter in this movie? What did he screw up on?
I think, again, he means well. Mm-hmm. And you see his father issues on full display in this movie. He even referenced it where he's like, my dad never said he was proud of me, and I just wanted to say you did a good job here. He's clearly keeping like a watchful eye on him. So he's not just putting this kid out there in this multi-million-dollar suit and not keeping an eye on him like it looks like early in the movie, which would have been incredibly irresponsible. But you could see, even with the stuff that's happening with Toomes and everything that he did afterwards damage control. Like at one point when they make the announcement of damage control and they're just like, oh, so the guy that causes all of this mess gets to then capitalize off of it and benefit off of it, which is Tony in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
You create a problem and then you fix it and get to be made out to be the hero for fixing it. Uh, but like
True.
you could see that in the stuff with Peter as well. It's like you've thrusted this thing upon him. You put him next to you in Civil War, and now all he's fixating on is your approval and being an Avenger. And then you just go away and leave him to his devices. And then you're surprised when this 15-year-old kid doesn't know how to handle that.
Yeah,
And
because
then,
how could he?
I mean, you try to foster him the best way that you can, but also a lot of what's happening to him is because you introduced him to things that he's not really mature enough to understand. And a big part of this movie is him maturing and becoming his own man. I mean, that's really the theme of his entire trilogy.
Theme of the entire trilogy, and also fleshes out the character, makes him more like the books. This is the most Marvel comic book accurate Spider-Man we've ever gotten. True to the Ditko run with Stan Lee. Steps were taken to make sure that happens. One of the things is, the other Spider-Man movies from Sony didn't exactly have that running dialogue that he would have in his head in the books. So in this movie, they gave him Karen, the voice of the suit, because he wanted to name her something, which is really awesome. And it's worth noting, Karen is Jennifer Connelly, whose husband is Paul Bettany. So Jennifer Connelly is Karen, Paul Bettany was Jarvis, and later the Vision. So a nice little synergy happening there. That way, Peter gets to talk, and you can hear his innermost thoughts as he's talking to Karen, which it just makes a lot of sense. And also the eyes on the suit. Man, those eyes are awesome. Expressive. They move with his eyebrows. Dude, what a great choice, man. Talk about the suit and how this suit stands out from the others that we've seen.
I think it's a near perfect Spider-Man suit. The only suit that I think looks better or on par is the suit from Amazing Spider-Man 2, which looks about as accurate as you can get, but it doesn't have the moving eyes, and the moving eyes in this movie just adds so much to it because it allows him to emote differently. I think the way that the colors look on it, the I was about to say the pattern, but the texture of it, it just looks perfect, man. It just looks photo perfect. Even when we see him put it on for the first time, and you can see that it's too big for him, and then it shrinks onto him. All of those little notes to make it feel more believable, I think, added so much to this. I think this suit is incredible. I think it's one of the best movie adaptations of the suit we've seen so far.
It's great. It's so good. I mean, he's got the webs under the arms.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah. He looks like a Steve Ditko drawing come to life here. I love it, man.
Yeah. I loved it every time he used the web pits to glide. I don't think we got enough web slinging scenes in this movie because that was a big hallmark of the first two movies, especially the Tobey movies. We saw a lot of him web slinging, but when we did see him do things in there with web slinging, like the stuff in Washington looks incredible.
It does, but he's limited because he's not in the city. He's just at the monument, so he's got nowhere to swing to.
Yes.
He just has to crawl the building. Do you remember that one graphic novel of him in Scotland? I can't remember the name of it now. I want to say Sienkiewicz did it, but I can't swear that he did because the art, I remember it was just really amazing. No pun intended. But I feel the need to do that every time I say the word amazing. But the thing about him being in Scotland was nothing to swing from. No skyscrapers, no tall buildings. And I'm like, oh, this is different. I remember the book, but I can't swear that I have it. I think I do, but it's been a long time ago. Excellent book. But yeah, we said when we reviewed the Maguire Spider-Man, you have to nail the web slinging. If you don't nail it, you don't have a movie because it has to look real.
Yeah. And there are certain scenes where he's doing a web sling. I think the montage towards the beginning of the movie with Blitzkrieg Bop playing
Mm.
is fantastic, of him trying to do all of the neighborhood stuff. But again, that's why it feels so New York. Him stopping by a bodega and getting a sandwich and all that stuff. Which is also what I loved from Amazing Spider-Man 2, that montage of
Mm.
him doing all of the stuff on the ground level. That's Spider-Man to me.
Really good stuff. Yeah, delivering pizzas. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good stuff.
Yeah. It's one of the few things that I thought they got right in Amazing Spider-Man 2, because some of the rest of the movie was not as good.
No. Talking about. Oh, okay. I was on the Maguire Spider-Man. Sometimes it's hard to keep these things straight.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the montage where at one point where he has the suit on and he has the snow hat on and the jacket on over it.
Right.
And he helps the kid with his project and everything. That montage, really great stuff.
Right. By the way, I love that we see Holland give a lady directions as Spider-Man. It's freaking great here.
Again, it's just that's such a Spider-Man thing to do. Everything he does on a ground level, and if we don't get that montage and everything he goes through in a movie, it doesn't feel as rewarding when he turns Tony down and says, "No, I have to be a friendly neighborhood spider," because if nobody was there in that moment to help the guy in that bodega or stop some of the stuff on the ground level, then who is? That's why he has a responsibility to not just be the best Spider-Man he could be, but to help people on the level that are beneath the view of the Avengers.
Good point. Yeah, it's like what we were told that the Netflix characters, they were street level crime with the Defenders and everything. Yeah, we've also got Marissa Tomei as May. I kicked off this show talking about we didn't have to see Uncle Ben killed. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they ever mention Uncle Ben in any of these three movies?
They reference it. And it's one of those you have to be really paying attention. When he talks to Ned at one point and he's telling Ned, I can't do that to her after everything she's been through.
Yeah.
I always took that to mean I can't do that to her after losing Ben.
Yeah.
I can't make her worry about me. I can't make her worry that I could get killed by something like gun violence, because that's what happened to Uncle Ben.
Dude, we didn't miss it, did we? We didn't miss that here. I don't think the movie needed it.
I don't think it needed it because everybody knows. Everybody knows that was his origin. Everybody knows that that's part of how he got here.
Yeah.
But just to have small references like that, and I believe his suitcase has Uncle Ben's initials on it, and Far From Home.
Oh, nice. I don't know if I remember that.
Yeah, if you notice, that was one of the big things from one of the first trailers from Far From Home. If you looked at the briefcase, his suitcase when he closed it, it has Ben's initials on it.
Nice. Well, yeah, look, in terms of Marissa Tomei, if I sit here and tell you I didn't balk at that at all when it was announced, I probably did. But I definitely did not go on social media and complain because it's dumb and it's weird. But, we grew up with the white-haired Aunt May. That's the aunt we know. And longtime fans like us, maybe we look at that and say, Marissa Tomei, she's hot, which a lot of people said. But I love the explanation because Stephen McFeely, one of the great, and Marcus and McFeely, of course, co-writer of Civil War, at the time said that they were trying to make Peter as naturalistic as possible. That's why his aunt isn't 80 years old. If she's the sister of his dead mother, why does she have to be 2 generations ahead? And I'm like, yes. Oh my God, I never thought about that before, but it makes perfect sense.
Yes. She's around the age that would make sense for her to be his aunt, and around this age for Aunt May to make sense. But he's absolutely right. If you're gonna have this big tragedy happen in his life that both his parents are gone at a very young age, it would make sense for the woman that raised him while he was in high school to be younger. And I love their dynamics together in this movie. I think she works very well. She shows at several points she's not stupid. She's paying attention to everything he does, but she's trying to let him figure it out.
And of course, the last scene at the end.
Yeah, straight out of again, straight out of Uncle Ultimate Spider-Man. This is definitely how Bendis wrote Aunt May, of her being upset when she finds out that he's Spider-Man. Because are you serious? Like, what are you doing?
Oh, what the? Yeah. So we've already done, oh my goodness, I've forgotten the name of the movie. We've already done No Way Home.
Yes.
So we know the fate of her character. I continue to be bothered by that tease of we thought she was going to be fine and then she wasn't fine. That slayed me. Like when she goes, I got emotional in the movie. Like, I'm like, I cannot believe they're doing this. Like, she didn't have to go. I still maintain we didn't have to lose her.
Well,
So.
Tragedy is a big part of Spider-Man comics.
It is.
And he's always paid for his mistakes. And he makes some big mistakes in that movie. And it made sense with, the history of his character that he doesn't get a break. Life doesn't let up on him. And it's just another one of those lessons where he can't afford to make those kind of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he always kept his identity secret. That was a big part of it. And I don't think people picked up on Far From Home is supposed to create these building blocks between this movie and No Way Home. No Way Home is in a lot of ways a movie adaptation of One More Day.
It is.
And of course, the results of One More Day, and before One More Day, the results that got to One More Day was Aunt May, unfortunately, getting shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oof, man, don't make me talk about those books. Jeez.
But yeah, the whole point of that is that he's got to learn that his identity and he has to protect it, because when he doesn't, this is what happens. This is what happens to his loved ones.
Yeah. We mentioned the John Hughes connection, like a coming of age comedy. They're in school. They got a little group of friends or whatever. And then he's running through the backyard like Ferris Bueller. I got to point that out.
Yes.
It's great stuff.
Yes. A lot of influence from the John Hughes movies here. I mean, several characters here, the way they interact with each other. I know the casting for Flash is going to be controversial, but boy, was he funny in this movie, man. Like, all the way to the point I forgot how funny he was in this movie.
When I say stuff. Penis, you say Parker.
When he gets to the party and he's doing those DJ effects,
yeah,
it's so funny. Just small things like him in the car and saying, "Listen, I know what a Branzino tastes like when it's not fresh."
I can't say I push back on Flash Thompson not being 6'3" and a jock with spiky blonde hair, because that's what we know from the books. But at the same time, you see the movie and you're like, wait a minute, I get it. He's a bully. But he's not the quintessential comic book bully. This is a real kid who's always giving Peter crap.
Yes.
And like, he's not better than Peter by any stretch, but he really gets under Peter's skin every time he talks.
Yes. And for the school he's in, this makes the most sense, because the Flash we know would have never gotten into that school. Because he's a dumb jock. And so the idea of this guy being in this school and the reason he's there, and this fits with how relevant this is to like modern day. Well, he's in the school because his parents could afford to send him here, not because he's as smart or as talented as some of his peers. No, my parents can afford to get me in this school, so that's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. That school is the Midtown School of Science and Technology.
Yes.
So... yeah, this is taking the characters and updating it for a new era. Everybody had a problem with the love interest. Well, first of all, we didn't know who this Liz character was supposed to be, but we thought, oh, they're not going to do Gwen or MJ. That's different.
They couldn't.
I guess that's different. That's fine. They're going to take it in a new direction. So, we got something different. And you're like, well, this is Laura Harrier as Liz. Peter's crushing on her like crazy. She's actually the Vulture's daughter. And we think, well, there you go. That's the crush. That's going to be the love interest. And then the double switch of Zendaya as a character called Michelle. And we don't find out till the end that she's actually MJ. What did you think about that swerve, man?
I think what they did with Michelle's character was so great throughout the movie because they get us to like her. And so then when we find out that she's MJ, it's like, um, I thought that was good, especially playing off, again, Bendis' run on Ultimate Spider-Man. And the MJ we get in that book is so different than the 616 MJ. And so I loved what they did with her here. I wish that we had seen Gwen Stacy at some point as part of their friend group. I think that would have made it even better. But, I don't think that they could have gone back to the well and done like a conventional Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy because that was such a big part of the other two franchises. And so they had to do something different. So using someone like Liz Allen, and Liz Allen, of course, is a character from the books that he also had a crush on. And that's also played up a lot in like the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. So I thought that was smart. I thought it was smart how they did it.
Yeah, and it felt like you said, you got to do something different. You can't always do the same thing in every film. You got to, to me, this whole movie felt like we have to update this. We would need to make this modern. Dude, and I'm no longer an 18-year-old kid, but if I were a 17 to 18-year-old kid, I think I'd really be into this movie. This thing feels hip. It feels new. It feels fresh. It doesn't feel like your grandpa's Spider-Man. I mean, I think they did a bang-up job with just the vibe of it all.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's also talk about the bad guys here. Bokeem Woodbine, who probably will never get enough credit for anything he freaking does. He's so good in this movie. He is Herman Schultz. Herman Schultz is the guy. I love that name. The shocker. That's great.
Yes, very comic book name.
Yeah.
Herman Schultz.
Yeah.
But man, absolute legend. Of course, like Jason Lyric and of all of the other movies that we've seen him in over the years. And he's great here as well. There are multiple comedians that are also in this movie that fill their roles as supporting characters very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was awesome. I just can't say enough good things about it. I like him in everything he does. Let's see. The other guy that was actually the original Shocker, if you know him, you'll know that he's been in other stuff as well. And I cannot find his name at the moment, but I know him because I think he got his own series at one point after this happened. It wasn't like comic book related, but it was something else. The Shocker that got killed. Yes. Man, did he get killed. Holy Lord.
Yeah, I was wondering when he was talking, I was like, well, how do you think this is going to go for you? When he kept saying, man, you really want me out there? Do you really want your wife knowing what you've been doing? I was like, what do you think he's going to do after this? You going to just let you go? No.
Why not? Man, he got dead. He got really dead.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, wasn't good. That is Logan Marshall Green, who played Jackson Bryce, the first Shocker.
Yes. I love the world building that they do in this movie to build up all of Spider-Man's villains, because I know some people will make the argument that a lot of these villains didn't really hate Peter Parker. They hated Tony Stark. But I love the idea that Spider-Man's like this blip on the board, and because in history with this character of him not being able to mind his own business and him getting in the midst of all of these things, just trying to do the right thing, he just continues to make all of these enemies. And that happens throughout this. I mean, we see that with Matt Gargan in this movie. The reference to Matt Gargan towards the end of the movie was also great with him in jail. Also, the actor that plays him is fantastic in Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. So I got excited seeing him here. But man, when you look at all of the people that he comes across here, the Tinkerer, I popped seeing the Tinkerer in this movie. I don't know if he was ever called the Tinkerer, but
Phineas Mason was his character name.
Yes, but that's essentially what he was the Tinkerer.
Mhm. Michael Chernus is that guy. Michael Mando was Max Gargan. Let's see, Flash, Tony Rivolo, I think is his name. Yeah. And man, yeah, Tony Revolori, excuse me, as Flash. We also, by the way, did you know that the teacher, the academic decathlon coach, Martin Starr, this is a role from The Incredible Hulk in 2008. It's the same character.
Really?
Dude, yes, I had no idea. That character apparently didn't have a name. Don't know how much he was in that movie, but it's the same guy here, the same actor with the same look and everything.
I had never noticed that. He's very funny
cool.
in this movie.
Yes.
When he's doing the bit on the school news thing where he's saying, yeah, I couldn't let that happen again. Couldn't lose students. And then he just, well, sorry, I said it wrong. He said,
Yeah.
I would be scared to death if we lost some students on this trip again.
Yeah, can't do that again. Yeah. And then never elaborates.
So funny.
Never elaborates.
He's so funny throughout this thing. When he comes in, he talks to the decathlon team, and he brings the trophy in. And he says, well, I'm going to have to put this back in the trophy case eventually, but just for motivational purposes, here's a trophy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
he's very
he's
funny
great.
in the second movie, too.
Yeah, and I love how she's out there and he's like, "Oh, you're not going to go in this? Well, I don't think I want to go in there to a building that slaves built." Well, I don't know if slave. He turns around, and the guard's making that face like, eh. So good. Oh my, very good stuff. By the way, I don't think we mentioned Ned one time. Let me tell you something, Mad. Freaking Ned in this movie is the best. Like,
Yes.
you need someone. And look, when I talk about Holland as Peter, I can't sit here and say Holland has charisma. He's not Downey. That's not what the role is. He needs to be innocent. He needs to be humble. He needs to be a kid. So it's not like, well, if I'm sharing the screen with Tom Holland, I got to bring it. No. You just have to be as believable as he is. And we absolutely got that here with Jacob Batalon as Ned. He is freaking fantastic. Dude, you actually believe that they're best friends in this movie. It feels real to me.
Yes. The Ned Leeds character is so interesting because, of course, there's mythos around Ned Leeds from the 616 character. Of course, Hobgoblin and everything around that. But this character is clearly Genki from the Ultimate comics, and it's not the Peter Parker iteration. It's from the Miles Morales comics, which, of course, ruffled some feathers with people that wanted to see this version be Miles Morales instead of Peter Parker. And then it made it look like, okay, you're taking an element of Miles's comics and putting it here. But I thought the Ned character here was great. It didn't really bother me that this is essentially Genki because, I mean, there's no getting around it. This is Genki. Like, his love of Legos, him fanboying out, the way he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, it's all lifted directly from those comics.
He wants to be the guy in the chair. That's
Yeah,
become
all
a
of these
line
things.
now,
Yeah, all of those things are lifted directly from the Ultimate Spider-Man comics starring Miles Morales.
Mm.
And so I can see some people's beef with it, but also it's the same thing that you said, that you have to modernize this version of Spider-Man. And if you need it for him to have a friend, it made sense to do this. And I don't think they wanted to go back to the well and do Harry Osborn again because Harry was such a big part of the Tobey movies, and Harry was a part of the second movie and not the best way. So I can see them not wanting to go back and do Harry Osborn.
Yeah. Yeah. I started laughing because I'm just looking at the cast list. Hannibal Buress as Coach Wilson. It's freaking great, dude.
He's so funny. Him just putting the TV on is just like the most high school coach thing ever.
Yeah.
Of him like, yeah, I have to come in here and watch you guys. Here, watch this movie.
Yeah.
And then, but one of the funniest scenes is when he leaves the detention. He's like, wait, where are you going? You can't do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't even try to stop him.
Come back. What are you doing? Yeah, it's great stuff. Yeah. But yeah, back to Ned and Peter. I just you have to nail it. Like, and dude, there are moments in No Way Home where I'm like, dude, I think this kid could go heel at some point. Like, it'd be interesting to see what they would do with that character if they'd put him in some sort of make him a villain. I don't know, but like, there's still opportunity for that to happen later. But I don't know if it'd be something they'd want to do. But
Yes.
yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, their dynamic is great together. The first time we see him and they're walking down the hall together, the great thing about Peter Parker and Spider-Man is that once he puts that mask on, it allows more of his actual personality to come out, and he feels like more of himself. And you can see how he might be nervous to talk to Liz and all these other people, but the person that knows him better than anybody else, in Ned, you can see like he is like. I know you said he's not charismatic, but like he's actually funny, and they have like this great dynamic, and you can see he's being himself with Ned in a way that he isn't with everybody else around him.
Yeah, that's true. 2 different times he crawls into his room and 2 people in his life find out who he is. Dude, when Ned's sitting there with that Lego Death Star, that's the funniest stuff ever.
Yeah, which is it's a scene straight out of Ultimate Comics. But yeah, when he's talking to him walking down the hallway, and he says like the most nerdy thing ever, and Peter's like, man, that's great. Like they're so you can tell why they're best friends, and man, it's just all of that stuff is why the ending to No Way Home is even more tragic. That he lost everything. Like the way he started his franchise as this guy with like the world in front of him. And it's such a great metaphor for, being in high school and how your future's right ahead of you. You're told over and over and over again in high school, like all of these decisions you make are going to mean something. Like your future is important. All of this stuff is going to impact your future. And he starts as a sophomore in high school. And by the time he leaves high school, all of the things that was like his social circle throughout the first 3 movies, he lost everything. He lost his aunt, he lost all of his friends, he lost his girl, he lost everything. He lost his mentor. Just yeah. Again, very Peter Parker story to tell, very Spider-Man story to tell of his trilogy ending in tragedy, but also triumph.
Yeah, he's a tortured character. And I think we've never reviewed the Flash TV show here. But I've often said that was DC's best effort at making a version of Spider-Man. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. Because, man, Grant Gustin in that show, his life sucks. Like, everything goes wrong. He makes mistakes. He's imperfect. The worst stuff happens. He can't get a happy ending to save his life. People around him get hurt. And, like, sometimes he F's up. Like, to me, that was the biggest example I've ever seen of that company really going for the jugular on, we need to make this guy real and make this relatable. Because that's the Spider-Man effect. That's the Spider-Man formula. It works for Spider-Man all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great stuff. By the way, you may know this. Don't know how it got by me. The Principal Morita is Kenneth Choi, who is also Jim Morita in Captain America: The First Avenger. In the principal's office, you can see photos of the Howling Commandos, which supposedly is a hint that they are related and he is his grandson. How you like that?
I did notice that. I feel like it's an Easter egg for something else. I forgot what. There's another Easter egg tied to that, and I feel like it might be linked to either Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something else.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Because I believe there's a character in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's also an ancestor of the Howling Commandos.
That's awesome. See, I got into the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I didn't go beyond that. For some reason, I just let it go. So yeah, somebody else is in this movie because I got to get your take on this. Did we drop the ball by not having the Prowler in later films? Like, you cultivate this character because we met Uncle Aaron here, like Donald Glover. What's your thoughts, man? Did we miss the boat here?
No, because I do think they're going to go back to it. Um,
Mm.
I do think we're eventually going to get a live action Miles Morales, but it wouldn't have made sense to go back to it in this trilogy because by the time you do that again, I assume we're going to see Miles on screen, and it doesn't really make sense to do that when you have the Into the Spider Verse movies going. You don't want to do both at the same time.
Mm.
Because you run into the same problem. And I've seen it multiple times with these things where, for example, you have the Flash show going on television, but then you introduce another character or another actor playing the same character in the movies. And it's like, why would you do that? Because you already have us in love with somebody else that plays this character. So if you have the Into the Spider Verse movies going, you don't want to also introduce a live action Miles as well. You want to do these things separately. So I assume we'll see Miles after that trilogy is done.
Mm. That's a good point. Yeah. Boy, they really butchered that Flash stuff. Don't even get me started. We talked about it, but man, I'm
Yeah.
still.
I still think Grant Gustin should have just played Flash in the movies, or they should have used Wally West instead.
Yeah. Oh, dude, for sure. Yeah. Missed opportunities. But just poor decision making, honestly. And look, if we're wrong, tell me why that film lost so much money. We're not wrong. Like, yeah, it just wasn't meant to be. Poor decision making on their part. I love how he mentions he has a nephew here too.
Yes, of course, that is definitely a way to get the audience to pop one because the audience knows who Aaron Davis is, and they make several allusions to him being a prowler. Even when he comes in there, he's trying to buy the weapons, and he's like, "Well, I don't want that. I just kind of wanted just a regular gun. I wasn't trying to send somebody back in time," which is such a great
Nah.
line.
Yeah.
But at one point, the Tinker is talking about all these other things he makes, and I believe he's talking about something that will help him scale walls, and he was interested in that, which I was like, yeah, of course, he's the Prowler.
Yeah, that's great. Good point. Yeah. By the way, there's one dude we haven't mentioned, and that is cranky Uncle Happy Hogan. Like, he's just a cranky uncle here. Like, Jon Favreau is just, don't know if Jon Favreau gets enough acting credit that he deserves. He's so great. Like, such a great addition to this movie. I love that Peter's trying to lean on him and he don't want to talk to him. And it's so good, man. I just love the dynamic those two guys have.
Yes,
He's like an annoying kid for him.
Yes, I love that there's two things happening here. That the dynamic between him and Tony is that Tony is in some ways trying to be a father figure for this kid without knowing it. And of course, because Peter has lost Uncle Ben, and it's this unspoken thing throughout this movie that he is just crying out for a father figure. And that's a big part of the reason why he latches on to Tony. And I think that's one of the brilliant things they do with this trilogy, that they never say it, but you know why. And it's also part of why Steve got so upset with Tony, because it's like, why are you doing this? Why are you exploiting this kid's father issues?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's just such a great dynamic. But where the Happy Hogan stuff comes in is that because Happy is such a big part of Tony's life, and he's been doing kind of the babysitting of this kid and looking after him, he also sees himself as a father figure, and that comes into play throughout the rest of the trilogy of him actually having a fling with May. So
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like he's very much annoyed by Peter, but I think he sees him as almost like a adopted son or adopted nephew as well.
He, I mean, dude, he's so heartbroken in No Way Home. He's so heartbroken over May. It's not even funny. It's so good. Yeah, looking after Peter here. And, you know, Tony puts him on Peter to kind of keep an eye on him. And I love how Tony tells him at one point, "What? Just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," that kind of thing. Like, dude, when the end comes and he says, "Behind that door, I got a lot of reporters waiting, and here's the suit," and it's the suit that he wore, that he wears in No Way Home, and then he wears in Endgame and Infinity War too.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells him, Happy's got your quarters ready. He'll show you to your room. And dude, in that moment, before Peter even said a thing, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This kid's 15. It's too soon. He needs to go back. And like there, sure enough, he says, I feel like I'm not taking this, He thought it was a test. And I love that Pepper was behind the door. It's so much fun, man.
Yeah. What a very MCU way to introduce the fact that they're engaged as well.
Yes.
I thought that was very funny. But man, again, this is a Spider-Man movie through and through because, of course, in the comics, Peter was given a chance to join the Avengers way before he actually joined, and he turned them down. And so I thought to get to that point at the end of the movie where he learned his lesson that not just that people on the ground level need him, his family, his friends need him. And so all of this stuff he built up, it's like, yeah, I could come here and be an Avenger. And when you could see it in his eyes when he was saying, "We got your quarters set up," and you could almost see without him saying it, "Oh, well, I'd had to leave Ned and I had to leave May. They need me. Like, I can't just leave them."
Yeah, it just wasn't time. And then when the time came, you're like, remember in Infinity War when they're on the ship and Tony tells him, "All right, congratulations, you're an Avenger," and the camera pans in and you're like, he's happy, but then he's got that look like this just got real very quickly.
Yes. Then we see what comes of him. It's
yeah.
But yeah, man, just the subtext of him building his supporting cast throughout this movie. So no, he can't just go and live in Avengers Tower because he can't just leave all of his friends and all of the people that we see that he cares so much about throughout this movie.
Remember when the Avengers first invited him to join in the book and he turned them down?
Yes.
Because he's like, because I got to be solo. I got to do my own thing.
Yes. I love that we got a version of that here. And I love that they swerved us because, of course, a lot of the influences on this movie come from Bendis comics, whether it be Ultimate Comics or, his run on Avengers. And of course, his run of New Avengers, Spider-Man finally joins the Avengers. So I could see people looking like, oh, this is going to be how he joins the Avengers. And we got the plot twist of him maturing and saying, hey, thanks for the offer, but I kind of need to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah, what a great payoff.
What a great payoff for sure. Did you know, by the way, that Spider-Man doesn't punch one bad guy in this entire film?
He doesn't.
They're not one punch. He uses webs. He counters his enemies' punches, which causes them to punch each other. He kicks them. He never punches anybody.
Again.
By the way, Phil, if Spider-Man doesn't hold back, if he punches you, you're dead.
Yeah. What? Yeah, watching this movie and now hearing that in retrospect, this trilogy is so good because that makes it mean so much more when he loses it on Norman and he is like punching him with closed fists.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, good call. Yeah, that man. So good. So many great little moments in this and by the way, the costume, his original costume, looks a whole lot like Ben Reilly's first Spider-Man costume. Man, that whole Clone Saga thing, as a fan that lived through that, let me tell you, right, man, that was not a great time to be a Spider-Man fan because you're like, dude, you talk about the fans losing their minds and storming the castle with torches and pitchforks, buddy, that's what happened. Like, Ben Reilly, that character, never got a fair shake. Whether he should have or not, I don't know. But man, what a time to be alive as a Spider-Man fan when that happened.
Yes. But I loved all of that stuff that we got his original handmade suit. Even the moment at the beginning of the movie where he comes to the hotel room and he's in Berlin and he thinks, "Oh, I'm just gonna put on my suit from home." And he's
Yeah.
like, Happy's like, "What are you doing? Put on this suit. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But yeah, when he puts on the older suit here, and we see earlier in the movie him making the web fluid. Again, all of this stuff is just like so Spider-Man. As much as I love the Toby movies, you got to have the web fluid, man. And just seeing him pop out the web cartridges and put them in this movie, those little small things, I loved it so much.
It's awesome. Yeah, because that's the character. And I can understand because the version of it was, well, we give him organic webbing, which man, that caused a stir too. But we give him organic webbing because realistically speaking, would this kid have access to the technology it would take? Would he actually be able? Wouldn't it be just easier if he built something to harness the webbing? And I'm like, I guess, but either way, you're kind of changing the character. And don't get me started on what they did in part 3 of that series, because Sandman did not kill Uncle Ben. I don't care how much you try to tell me otherwise.
Yeah, I love that there's a note from Spider-Man comics. I can't remember which writer introduced it, but after he got bitten by the spider, he just knew instinctively how to make the web fluid.
Hmm. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, speaking of his age, he was 19, as we said. Toby was, Andrew Garfield was 26. Toby was 43. I'm just kidding. Toby was 25 when he got cast. So Tom was definitely the youngest Spider-Man we've seen.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Yeah, Toby in the first movie, I thought he fit the role definitely as a younger Spider-Man,
Mhm.
but like particularly in the second movie, he looked older. But I thought he felt more like a college student in in the second movie. I'm very curious to see how they're going to handle Peter Parker in college in the fourth movie.
Yeah, because dude, his whole world's upside down now. They don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know him. I mean, man, that's going to be something. And I mean, plus the clock's ticking, Phil. Like these actors are getting older. Like, man, how much different are they going? You think they're going to look that much different? Holland still looks great. I don't know. Maybe it'll be fine, but I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Like again, the clock's ticking here.
Yeah, I mean, I I've read somewhere that they're already talking about bringing in a new love interest, but I assume because we're not going to see MJ based off the ending of No Way Home. But that sets up so many interesting things. You can introduce Gwen Stacy in that movie. Maybe we finally get a iteration of Black Cat in that movie that we haven't seen yet in a Spider-Man movie. That'd be interesting.
Well, there are two big reasons to be interesting. I wonder if they're going to keep her comics accurate.
Yeah.
Not to put it in the gutter. I'm just saying, like, dude, after a while, it kind of seemed like that's all that character had going for it. Like, so there were books that it just was poorly written. And I'm like, is this the only reason we put her in the book so we could ogle her cleavage? Is that why she's in this book? Like, what are we doing?
Well, I mean, they just have such an interesting dynamic.
Sure.
As, for her as a love interest, because Black Cat loves the idea of Spider-Man. She doesn't love Peter Parker.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so if you're going to introduce this idea that he protects his secret identity, it's like his most coveted secret, it makes all the sense in the world for you to introduce a love interest that is interested in Spider-Man, not Peter Parker.
That's right. She did not love Peter. She loved Spider-Man. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, dude. I mean, it could work. It could work. Why not? The Marvel folks have proven that they can make things work and keep it true to the source material. For sure. By the way, during filming, supposedly Holland accidentally punched Keaton for real. And of course, the moment it happened, Keaton just turned to him and said, "I'm Batman." So, which is great. Great story.
Man, they have several interactions. They have great chemistry on screen.
Yes.
Like you said, that moment in the car is, man, some of the best acting in the movie. Not just on Michael Keaton's part, but just the way that Tom plays off of him. Great. When he comes and he tries to confront him after he leaves the dance, and he's explaining, basically he's monologuing.
Yeah.
He's monologuing to Tom, and Tom is still basically just like, I have to stop you. And Adrian's just like, you know what? I like you, kid, man. I like your grit. When you first showed up, I didn't get it. Now I get it. And the whole time he's just like, what did you think that was gonna do? He's like, well, I was just keeping you busy while I got the wings ready.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. Like, you didn't listen, Yeah. Because when Shocker hits him, like, you made the wrong choice. I'm like, yeah, he kind of did, didn't he? He's getting his butt handed to him right now.
Yeah. What you get, there's so many scenes in here. There's no way it's not influenced by the first Spider-Man movie. When they're in the car and Liz is saying all these things, and you can see all of the dots connecting in his head, and he's figuring it out that Peter is Spider-Man. It kind of reminds me of Norman sitting at the table when he's thinking about all these things, and you can see the dots connecting. It's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why would you be bleeding? Bike messenger. That doesn't make any sense. Also, Peter very much lies like a kid, and I love the idea that an adult sitting there could already just like see through all these lies he's saying.
Yeah. I love how he puts it together. Keaton looking in that rearview mirror. That's a great moment.
Yeah, so many great moments. Of course, Liz not knowing any of this is going on, and she's just yapping.
Yeah.
And the whole time, these two are making eye contact and like looking around, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean? I was at the dance. I was at that party. No, you were just here for a few seconds. I was there.
Yeah.
All great stuff. But yeah, when he opens up that glove box and comes out with that gun, and he's just like, does she know? And he's still trying to keep it on. Know what? What are you talking about?
It's like playing close to the vest. I can respect that.
Great scene.
Dude,
Great swerve and great scene to follow up. Just great all around.
Oh man. Dude, for sure. Like after he threatens to kill the kid, he's like, man, he's like, you know what? I just saved your life. Like, because he didn't kill him. Now, what do we say? And he's like, thank you. And he goes, you're welcome. And he just gives him that nod like, no problem, son. You're welcome. What a great thing.
Yeah. There are so many wonderful things that they do throughout this movie with this dynamic with him and Peter Parker. And I mean, even at the beginning of the movie where he's looking at that drawing of all of the superheroes, and I didn't pick it up the first time I saw it, but I was like, oh, it's a picture that Liz drew of superheroes, because of course she is idolizing superheroes, and because of course that's what a kid would do, but an adult would be looking at it like, oh, these guys are a problem. Like, you're just a kid that just sees all of this stuff as like, cowboys and Indians. That's what he called it. At one point, he's like, yeah, we're kids. We drew cowboys and Indians. But these kids, they idolize these guys and these clowns in suits.
Yeah.
And so, of course, he looks at the world through the lens of an adult. And you see more and more of Spider-Man having to interact with adults. And you see him lose, like, the innocence that he came into this with, of just seeing, like, the Avengers as this great thing. I mean, even the great note of the robbers at some point at the beginning of the movie that are robbing ATM, they're dressed as the Avengers, because the bad guys, they're like, no, we're not the bad guys. They are. They're the ones that are tearing up things, and we lost our jobs because of them.
Yeah. Yeah, because when he goes in the ATM, he's like, wait, you guys aren't the Avengers, because he tells him, oh, Hulk, Cap, nice to finally meet you, because they were not in Civil War.
Great stuff when he's like, Iron Man, why would you need to rob a bank? You're a billionaire.
Yeah. That's exactly what Spider-Man would do.
All very funny, but man, I just love all of those notes of like the way an adult would see the world, and the way Spider-Man still as a teenage boy would see the world. And you see more and more of those things start to merge in this movie and throughout the trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact they aged him down, made him age appropriate for the movie, so it fit the high school years. I mean, it works, man.
Yeah, but I mean, just like crashing that fourth wall of it's not just Adrian looking at the drawing. The first thing we see is the drawing of the Avengers because it's almost like saying to the audience, "This is what you see these guys as, but this is the reality of it. This is how we see it. We have to
Mm.
clean up their mess. We're the ones that are left as collateral damage."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. By the way, speaking of damage control, we never mentioned Tyne Daly, who's head of damage. She's Anne Marie Hogue, and that's from the books,
Mhm.
the head of U.S. Department of Damage Control. So Tyne Daly of Cagney and Lacey fame. That's before your time, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that come back. That to me, that's a Disney Plus streamer just waiting to happen. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Man, I hope we see Liz Allen again. I thought that looking at this movie because we do get that great Easter egg in No Way Home where she's in the newspaper. Did you ever catch that?
I did not catch that. I don't think so.
I forgot what it was, but there's like a newspaper or something he's reading, and there's a little small blip where somebody interviews Liz Allen, and she says Peter Parker's a liar.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I do remember that now. Crazy. Man, what a movie. What a good movie. Jeez. It's in the archives, kids, by the way. You got 3 Spider-Man for the price of 1. Can't beat that.
Yeah. I man, there's so many things about this that I love. Just like the ending credits, and it's still handled in like a very like teenage way with like the paper and the drawings.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say enough about just how I love how this is presented as like a high school movie featuring Spider-Man.
Yeah, it is very much a high school coming of age drama that just happens to include a superhero. Yeah. Because again, Spider-Man is treated as a real person in the books, as is most Marvel characters, I dare say, historically. In Marvel, the stories are about the guy wearing the mask. And in DC, oftentimes the story is about the mask.
Yes.
And it's Phil, it's a different ideology. When you go behind the mask, so to speak, you're diving into that person, who that person is. It's just a far different way of storytelling.
Yes. The thing I love, there's a theory that's online quite a bit that the first 3 movies are kind of his overall origin story. And the thing I love about it is that throughout the trilogy, you see more and more, like in this movie specifically, he tries to leave like all of his everyday things behind, like going to school and all of his extracurricular stuff to be Spider-Man. And the more that he buries himself in Spider-Man, the more like his regular life is like falling apart around him. It's like the more he sees like he's not tending to these things as Spider-Man, the worse his life gets.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, like this kid who didn't have a great life to begin with now has all this responsibility thrown on his shoulders. And if he doesn't toe the line, bad things happen. I mean, bad things are already happening, but it just gets worse for him.
Yes. And I mean, that's such a big part of Spider-Man mythos. Of course, that's how he lost Uncle Ben, is that he used his powers to try to get fame and to get noticed. And that's a big theme in this movie as well. He doesn't want to be an Avenger for the right reasons. He wants to be an Avenger because he's chasing fame and glory. And that's not why he got these powers. That's not what he should be doing with these powers. Even if he wants to do the right thing and be an Avenger, it became more about the idea of being an Avenger than being an Avenger to do the right thing.
Yeah. For sure. Well, we know that, there was supposed to have been an Amazing Spider-Man saga from Sony, and it was canceled, of course, because the Sinister Six was going to happen with Keaton returning. And Mysterio even made a live-action debut in Far From Home. So that movie was still in the book supposedly, and then things happened, and Marvel continued or shared rights with Sony, so Sony canceled their. Man, how would that trilogy have looked had Sony been behind it?
I can't say that I believe that would have went well, but I really, really want to see a live-action Sinister Six someday.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not sure if we're gonna get it in this iteration, but I would love to see it.
I mean, we're getting Thunderbolts. Whoever thought we'd get that?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, they've still got so many things that they could do with Spider-Man. There's so many villains they haven't used yet, and
Yeah.
I love that coming into this trilogy, they went out of their way to use characters we haven't seen. They didn't come straight in the door and do Green Goblin, for example.
Yeah.
Um, they went with a character that we haven't seen yet, and went with Vulture, who was, I believe, going to be the villain for Spider-Man 4 originally, right?
I think you're right. Yes.
So yeah, I loved that right away. And as a big fan of Mysterio, I was so excited to see he was the villain for the second movie. I was so glad we got to see him. Very much looking forward to see what they do with the fourth movie and what Spider-Man villain they use, because of course has one of the best rogue galleries in all of comics.
Oh, for sure. People brag about Batman's Rose Gallery, and it's a good one, but you know, Spider-Man's is fantastic. I mean, speaking of Rose Gallery, supposedly we could have had Vince D'Onofrio. He made some noise at the time talking about, I want to be in the movie, and they didn't work it in. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense as a villain for a future Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've said over and over again, I would love to see that and to see him interact with like mobsters, because that's such a Spider-Man trope as well.
It is. Yeah, man, that would have been amazing. By the way, kids, if you are a fan of Ted Lasso, I'm here to tell you. Yes, I have a Ted Lasso podcast on the side. Shameless plug. That's not what I'm trying to get at. In that series, Phil, they drop Easter eggs all through the series. And one of the ways they do it is through books. So a character called Coach Beard will be reading a book with his feet kicked up on the table. And we would pause the series as we did that podcast to see what books they're reading, and it always connected to the story. The same thing happens here. Michelle, if you notice, she's constantly reading books. This is good stuff. Never knew it till now. At around 26 minutes, she is reading of Human Bondage by W. Somerset Maugham. In that novel, the protagonist is an orphan living with his aunt and uncle, which is good. At around 46 minutes, she is reading The Invitation to a Beheading by Vladimir Nabokov. In that novel, a condemned man awaits his execution accompanied by only a spider in his cell, which is nice. And then at around 59 minutes, during the Washington Monument scene, she is wearing a Sylvia Plath t-shirt. Plath wrote a poem called Spider and used spiders as images in other poems.
Wow.
So,
I did not catch all of that.
No chance. When she was in the stands in the gym reading, I'm like, I bet that book is supposed to be something. So, sure enough, it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that they play up throughout the movie that she's following him around and paying attention to everything he does. And we very much get at the end the first hint that she knows who he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that something?
Yeah. I love how she does it. Like, where are you going?
Yeah.
He's like, why you asking? No reason.
Yeah. Never mind. I don't really care. Bye. Like, that's great. Like, you're always disappearing. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I also love how because again, these are teenagers, and there's this great bit from like a good amount of like the coming of age high school movies. Like Lucas, for example. Lucas spends the entire movie trying to get the girl that ends up falling for Charlie Steen's character. And the whole time, his friend that was in the band with him really likes him, and he can't see that. And that's the same thing that happens here. Michelle clearly likes him, and he can't see it. He's chasing Liz throughout this whole movie, and she clearly likes him.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, even when he comes to the dance and she jokingly throws up the middle finger at him.
Yeah. She's like a boy. Like it's the old story of on the playground, a boy pushes down a girl if he likes her. Like, because boys don't know how to express their love or affection for a girl at the time.
Yeah.
So she's just going to be stiff and coarse with him.
Yeah.
That's great. By the way, we mentioned Hannibal Buress. We did not say the line when he played the cat video. We're going to watch his cat video, even though he's probably a war criminal now. What a great freaking line that is.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's great. Again, a lot of Easter eggs here, kids, from start to finish. If you're paying attention, they'll pay it off for you. Here's something to think about. Really think about this. If Michael Keaton turned down the part of the Vulture, Mark Hamill wanted it.
Oh, wow.
Dude.
That could have been great.
And this is said with all love and respect to Luke Skywalker here. Would it have been too over the top? Too campy, maybe?
No, I think he would have played the role well.
He would have played it the way you know what I mean? Like humble, not like over the top supervillain thing.
Yeah, he might have. I think he would have been great here. But how funny is that both of those, the guys that could have ended up in this role were both notably Batman characters.
Batman and the Joker. Well done. Yeah, dude.
So funny. And by the way, when I first saw the movie and we get to swerve that Adrian is Liz's dad, the biggest pop for me before that was that Liz's mom was Garcelle Beauvais. I was like, wait a minute. when she comes and picks her up after they come back from the Washington trip, I was like, wait, it's Garcelle Beauvais.
Yeah, she Jamie Foxx show, Coming to America. Yes. Well, the sequel, yeah.
I popped so hard for that. I was like, wait, it's Garcelle.
By the way, a brilliant move because nobody saw it coming. I mean, mostly because Liz was not, for lack of a better phrase, way to say it, Liz was not a white girl. So, honestly, no one, I believe, made the connection that, hey, I wonder, dude, at the time, had that been spoiled for you at all when you went to see this?
No, it was a complete swerve, but they do two things throughout the movie to throw us off the scent because he mentions his kid multiple times. The first time we see him, he talks about his kid. And so we never think oh, I wonder who his kid is in this movie. And so when we see Garcelle show up as her mother, it's like, oh, well, that's her parent. And we never think about oh, who is her dad until he comes down the stairs.
It's great. It's so good. Are you kidding me? Oh, what a great swerve. And you're right what you said earlier. That's definitely something they would do to Spider-Man in the books.
Yes. It's happened to him so many times where his normal life and his life as Spider-Man converge in the worst way possible.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's great stuff. Man, again, there's so many good things here. John Watts just absolutely nailed this movie. I don't know how familiar I was with the guy before coming into this.
Yeah.
Basically, this was his big film. He did a film in 2015 called Cop Car, which had Kevin Bacon in it. He did all 3 movies of the trilogy.
Yeah. I thought he nailed the comedy in this movie particularly. I thought the comedy here was so good. The comedy is very good in the second movie as well, but I thought he nailed it in this movie. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't he going to direct the Fantastic Four movie?
I don't see that here. But did you know he was the guy behind Skeleton Crew?
I did not know that.
I did not know that either. He was a director and executive producer and writer and showrunner and creator.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for him.
Yeah, dude.
I thought at one point he was linked to the Fantastic Four movie. Maybe he turned it down. Maybe that's why I'm mixing it up.
Possibly could be. I don't see anything here, but it does not mean. I don't see anything here, but it does not mean it wasn't talked about at one point.
Yeah, I don't remember why I thought he was linked to Fantastic Four. I think he initially was going to be the director and then he pulled out. I think that's what it was.
You always wonder, when you hear stories like that, did the director just decide, this is not something I want to tackle? Because I've I've heard stories like that before of directors just being honest and saying, I don't want to commit 2 years of my life or 3 years or whatever. And plus this is maybe beyond what I'm accustomed to doing. And I don't know, man.
Yeah. Here we go. I just found a Deadline article. Spider-Man director John Watts exits Marvel's Fantastic Four. This was in 2022.
Ah, man, great memory. It's now directed by Matt Shackman.
Okay. But what great synergy that would have been if he directed Fantastic Four, because of course Spider-Man made his debut in Amazing Fantasies next to Fantastic Four.
Yep. By the way, another bit of trivia: the license plate on May's car is AMF 1562.
Amazing Fantasies.
Yeah, number 15, 1962. Great stuff.
Yeah.
I love when they care so much to do something as simple as a license plate just to put it in there.
Yeah. I think there are other small things like that with like names of creators throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you notice, by the way, when he picks Peter up, that he's in front of the moon? He meaning the vulture with his wings spread, and it's like simulating the bat when the bat wing flew up in front of the moon.
I did notice that.
Oh, it's great stuff, man.
The Vulture's look in this movie was fantastic. I thought they did a great job with the wings and making them look interesting. I thought his look was fantastic with like the jacket with the fur collar and even his helmet and how it feels like realistic. But when he has the helmet on, you just see the green eyes. Of course, those big yellow eyes.
Yeah, yes. And dude, let me tell you, putting the fur on a leather jacket. Because why? Number one, time of year. If it happens to be breezy, I don't know. They're not really dressed for cold weather. But dude, the higher you go, the colder it is.
Yeah.
That's great.
And of course, that's always been a part of the comic character of Vulture. He has like the fur collar around his suit, like a vulture, of course.
Brilliant. Yeah. And by the way, you're right about the vulture. That was going to be John Malkovich.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I like John as an actor, but I'll never forget when he turned down Green Goblin, basically thinking that comic movies were kind of beneath him. I'm like, all right, pal, we don't need you. We got Willem Dafoe. We're good.
Yeah. I'd have been interested to see what he would have done with the role.
Oh, sure. I'm sure he would have crushed it. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
But, yeah. By the way, Tony Revolori played Flash, received death threats for playing the role of Bully Flash Thompson. Yikes. This is where we are. Now, I don't try to end the show on a bad note, but we take this stuff so seriously. We send death threats to an actor because he's playing a part in a movie.
That's ridiculous. I'm sure some of it is race related because he's Indian, correct? And he's playing a white character, which great actor. I thought he did a great job in these movies. So
yeah,
I mean, listen, if you would have given me like a comic accurate Flash and they built to like Flash as Venom, I would have loved that. But in these movies, I loved what we got as well.
Yeah, nothing wrong with what we got.
And we got the stuff that we didn't get, I feel, in the Tobey trilogy with Flash, where Flash hates Peter Parker, but he's like a big Spider-Man super fan.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Remember, like he loves Spider-Man. It's awesome. By the way, Revolori's parents are from Guatemala.
Okay.
So yeah, dude, you're right. I honestly thought because he kind of has that look, which kind of sounds more racist than I meant it to. But yeah, that I kind of thought the same thing. Well, kids, we could probably keep gushing on this for another 2 hours because it's such a great freaking movie. But I think we're going to wrap this up because we're definitely going to come back and do the sequel. That way we can say we've got the trilogy, boom, in the archives. So that'll be the plan for the next episode, which I think should be pretty fun. Man, Phil, so much great stuff in this movie, man. So much fun stuff. Like you said, sowing the seeds for what's to come. I mean, and again, love that Stan. I would love to have heard, and I don't know if he ever commented on, I don't know if Stan would be the kind of guy to say, this is my favorite, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he never did those things, but you have to think maybe this was his favorite version on some level.
I would assume that it meant something that one of his greatest creations is finally back under the Marvel umbrella. I mean, for him, this was one of his, this was one of his tentpole creations. I mean, I just don't know what Marvel Comics would be without Spider-Man. I don't know who I would be without Spider-Man. So I have to assume Stan feels the same way. Like that was such a big part of his creative career.
Yeah. Great stuff. Really good stuff. I mean, we've told this story on the show before, but Joe Quesada tells a great story of talking to Stan and having a different ideology of what Spider-Man was before he like really started working on the character. And Stan basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, kids, but Stan basically asked him, tell me the best thing about Spider-Man. It's like, well, the fighting, tell me something else. Swinging from the rooftops and stuff. Well, tell me something else. And so he's going down the list of things that are great about Spider-Man. He's like, you know what I care about the most? How's he going to make rent this week? How's he going to pay his bills? When he takes that mask off, how do people in his life, how do they respond to him? How easy is his life? Is it hard? Is it tough? What's he got to do tomorrow? How bad does his back hurt from fighting today? And of course, I'm paraphrasing like crazy, but that to me, Phil, shows why that guy was so freaking amazing and so great at what he did, because he cared more about the character and telling real stories versus how cool can we make the suit look this week? That wasn't on his mind, man.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Stan Stan.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you can come in and say the thing that makes the X-Men cool is, hey, man, they've got all these powers. Wolverine can pop claws out of his hands, and Storm can control the weather and everything. Cyclops can shoot these beams out of his eyes. But the core dynamic of the X-Men is that they are willing to stand up for their fellow man, even when they're not willing to stand up for them.
Yeah. 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 It's great. And again, kids, I will just remind you here, without Stan, we don't have any of this.
Yeah.
None of this happened. Phil, this ain't coming from Hollywood. This came from Stan. Like, the whole MCU. I mean, we can't say every single character, of course, but you could always make the argument had Spider-Man failed, nothing else would have happened. I mean, I think it's plausible to argue that. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Stan Lee, man. So, kids, that's all for us here today. That's Spider-Man Homecoming here for you. We'll be back with the sequel, Far From Home. So keep your eyes open for that. But Phil, before we go, give me your last word on Spider-Man Homecoming.
I think they had a Herculean task in front of them in some ways of trying to differentiate this franchise from the other two franchises. And I think they knocked it out of the park. Tom Holland had also a daunting task of his own of trying to differentiate himself from Tobey or Andrew Garfield. Same thing. He came in and made this role on his own. He felt like Peter Parker. He felt like Spider-Man throughout this thing. Can't say enough great things about this movie and what they did with the character. I remember at the time coming out of Civil War thinking, oh, I'm so excited for the first Spider-Man movie we get. And this exceeded expectations, in my opinion.
Oh, so wonderful. Just such a great flick, man. Can't say enough good things about it. I think this is, and I think Marvel had a lot of crown jewels in the crown of the MCU. This is definitely a jewel for them. Like, can't say enough good things. We've spent nearly 2 hours talking about it. We could spend 2 more. It just, at some point it felt like I was going too fast because there's just so much great stuff here to talk about, folks. I mean, that's why I'm just consistently in the bag for this, because, you will never go wrong drawing from the original source material when the source material is just that good. And, people can balk all day long at comic book movies, talk about too many, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I don't want to hear that. I don't care about it. People can criticize all they want to. Like, we have been fans of these books for years, books that have won awards, that true writers, and not, comic writers are true writers, don't get me wrong, but novelists have come into the world of comic books because they see the potential. They see the stories that can be told, and stories that stand the test of time. Since 1962, kids, we are still talking about Spider-Man, and that is not just because he looks cool, because the writers brought this guy to life. Stan brought him to life and made us care about him, which is what we've done with this movie and beyond. So let's remember that next time we want to crap on something that you don't. I'm just too. Then go watch something else. Okay, my God, what are we doing? Go watch something else. That's all I can tell you. But stay tuned for the sequel, kids, coming soon here on the podcast. Thanks as always for following, and we'll be back with Far From Home. But until then, that is Spider-Man: Homecoming. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.